Greetings, dear friends. Again, we were saying hello at the international podcast from the Nationals People's Unity Club, face-to-face program with Mr. Kazakov. Kazakov is myself. We have George Galloway as our guest. Many years he was a deputy of the British Parliament, and today he's a journalist, analyst, and since he is in Britain, let's talk about Europe. It's been 4 years since the special operation has started. For many, it is clear in Russia, in Europe, in the United States that 4 years of opposition did not come from Ukraine, but from the ones that are standing behind Ukraine's back. It's just Europe now. Americans are kind of washed their hands off. And a question comes in. Today in Europe, they formulate just recently, a week ago, was the phrase of the head of the Euro Parliament. She's from Italy, I forgot her name. She was in Vilnius, and she said, Ukraine's defeat is the defeat for Europe. So, kind of, they don't look at the victory, but I came to this conclusion in summertime that for Europe, this conflict, also existential conflict. When SVO started, for Russia, for Ukraine, it was existential conflict. For United States, for Europe, for NATO, it was a contract war, a war for interests. But now it's very different. So my question comes in. Is Europe ready to acknowledge defeat, political defeat, definitely it will be political, and not to continue the conflict? And if they do continue, where are they going to stop?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to TASS. This is the very first time I have been at TASS in person, although I have been aware of it all of my life. So it's quite a thrill to be here, even in these very difficult situations and in the face of your very difficult question. This has always been a NATO war against Russia. And it didn't start 4 years ago. It didn't even start in 2014. It started in 1945. It has always been the intention of the Western Alliance, later NATO, from 1949. It has always been their intention to use the Ukraine against the then Soviet Union, to try and break it up, try and weaken it. Indeed, it has always been the intention of the Western Alliance to exploit what we might call the nationalities question. They did it successfully in Yugoslavia. They destroyed Yugoslavia after huge investment across many decades of exacerbating the national question and weakening the supranational, multinational nature of the state, and they destroyed it. This is what they have long tried to do here in Russia. So far they have failed. I pray that they continue to fail. They failed because they underestimated the determination of the Russian leadership and people. They underestimated the military, economic, and political strength of Russia, but they will not stop trying. That's why it's important that this war has a comprehensive end. Because if it has what you might call a Minsk III end, it will, just like Minsk II, merely be used to buy time, to replenish, to reorganize, reinforce for another go. So given the level of sacrifice the Russian people have made in blood and treasure, it's very important that this war does not come back again in 5 years or in 10 years. It's very important that this war is comprehensively ended. So whether the Europeans are ready to accept defeat, first of all, I reject the premise that this war in Ukraine had anything to do with the national interests of the European countries. Quite the contrary. Our national interests have been sacrificed by the globalists and by the power elite in Western countries. Germany was a prosperous country, industrious country, the manufacturing powerhouse of Europe. And now it's wrecked. The British economy has been going down for a very long time, but its decline has been massively exacerbated by our participation in this war. Our old age pensioners are literally dying of cold. The British government removed the cold weather payments from our old people and gave it directly to Zelensky on the same week, the same amount, 3.4 billion. They took it from our cold pensioners and they gave it to this little crook, Zelensky. Our people, our economies have been wrecked by our involvement in this NATO war on Russia. So the faster the war ends, the better for the European people. For their elites, no. Their elites have invested a lot of their people's money and a lot of their political capital in this war, and they stand to lose a lot if it ends in the way that people like me predicted that it would end, in a Russian victory, in a NATO defeat, and in a gigantic loss of national treasure and the reputation and prestige of our countries. I think the European public can see that clearly. If you look at the approval ratings of Starmer, of Macron, of Merz, between the three of them together, you could not muster 50% approval, between three of them. And the government in the Netherlands fell. The governments throughout the West, including, by the way, Donald Trump, in November, are going to fall as a result of disastrous foreign policy decisions. So I think the public can see it clearly. And I ask the Russian people to differentiate between the ordinary people of Europe and the corrupt oligarchies that govern us, at least for the present. So that's my message. Finish this war comprehensively. And don't blame the ordinary working class in Western countries. We are not to blame.
I think that in Russia, Russians quite well understand the difference between the European nations and elites, of course, globalists, Euro-Atlantical, and etc. But it's a constant narrative that they use in Russia, and people understand it. But the decision is not taken by the people. The decisions are taken by elites. They have the stamps, signatures, seals. And myself, I always call people to turn on your fantasy and imagine, just imagine, how will it take place. For example, we're making a movie. The movie is how to finish a Ukrainian war. And in this movie, we have actors, Starmer, Macron, Merz. How are we going to write down their roles, their positions? Here comes out Macron, and he says, the war in Ukraine is finished. Russians will get this, this, and that. Ukraine lost this, this, and that. We lost. Macron will not be allowed to say that. Starmer cannot say that. Merz cannot state that. They will not be allowed to say such things. And it's important. After the end of war in South Ossetia, they call it 80808, it was August. In September of 2008, Putin took a responsibility to help Europeans to keep the face. He did it many times, coming out of the common positive ideas for Russians and for everybody else. And now, during SVO, he said that publicly. You will lose, and we will not help you to keep your face. Russia will formulate as it is. From what we see now, Azov Sea, Internal Sea, 5 new regions, population, cities. That's even for today's stage, right? This is a material on the map, confirm defeat of Kiev regime. But today, in Kiev again, Ursula von der Leyen, and they again, we are one. But if you are one, that means you are losing together with Kiev regime. So, again, I want to ask the question, in this opposition, somebody has to take a step back. Because if it will not take place, the escalation would go on. And Putin again, it's not I think he will do, it's what he already stated. He already said that to you. If you want to fight us, come on tomorrow. But if you do take such decision, then we don't have to speak to anybody. So Putin demonstrates the following. We're not going to take a step back. We can't make a step back. But if Europe cannot either, then we're going to come to great European war.
Well, let's hope not, because a great European war will become a world war. It will become a thermonuclear war.
Да.
It will become an intercontinental thermonuclear war.
Да.
And then we will cease to exist as a species. And the world will go dark for 1,000 years. So everything that can be done to avoid that must be done. Going to the first of your questions. If Starmer, Macron, Merz cannot say that we have lost, that Russia has won, and that a compromise will have to be reached, which will represent our defeat, they will have to be replaced by someone who will say so. And that's already, I think, underway. It will not be done in exactly the words that you would wish them to say, but its meaning will be the same. The writing is on the wall. The Russian advances are clear. The economic bankruptcy of Western Europe is clear. It is evident to all of their public, which is why their public hates their government. You know, 80% of the people in China love their government, at least support it. 80% of the people of Russia
80, да.
support their government. 11% of the British people support their government. These are electoral arithmetics that cannot forever be ignored. And so they're going to have to eat humble pie, or as the Americans say, eat crow. They're going to have to acknowledge the material realities on the ground. And the longer they take to do that, the more crow, the more humble the pie is going to be. For example, I mean, I'm not privy to thinking in the Kremlin. I'm not Russian. In a way, it's not my business. But if I were a Russian, I would be demanding no less than the liberation of the entire eastern part of Ukraine, including Odesa, including Kharkov. I would ensure that the rump state of Ukraine would have no access to the sea to sabotage and make war against Russia. I would be insisting on neutrality in Kyiv as a condition, basic condition, for allowing there to be a regime in Kyiv. And I'm talking about real neutrality. I'm not talking about a neutrality that can be reneged upon, like Finland or like Austria. I'm talking about a neutrality that can be physically guaranteed. These are the only circumstances I would accept if I were a Russian. And I would be hoping that my government would see clearly the arguments for that. As it happens in former times, I fell in love with Odesa. I visited it many times. And I can't bear the idea of Zelensky and his regime continuing their dictatorship in Odesa. In the end, this is a matter for your government and your president. But I would be driving a hard bargain now. But I want to challenge something that you said earlier. You said the Americans had washed their hands of the subject, but not really. The Americans are still arming, still funding, and still providing the intelligence which keeps the war going. Sure, they have subcontracted it to the other NATO partners, but NATO is them, and they are NATO. And Donald Trump could end the war tomorrow. If he told Zelensky what he told Putin in Alaska, that would be washing his hands. But he's not quite doing that. He has wounded Zelensky, but he's not prepared to kill him. And the question is, why not? He's making war here, there, and everywhere. Why does he need another war to have America's hand in? If he told Zelensky, there is a plane at the airport, its propellers are turning. In the hold is all the money you stole, and you can leave now and come to Miami. Or the plane will depart without you, and you will be left to face, as Medvedev just said, a Mussolini ending in the public square in Kyiv. If he put it that way, believe me, Zelensky would be on the plane. But he hasn't put it that way. And until he does, I fear that this war will continue.
Yeah, it's a long-term discussion. I think that a lot of watchmen are making the same mistake as Trump did. Trump thought that he is the king of a mountain and he can do it all. But it didn't work out that way. And it was a surprise for Trump, including in Ukraine, including in the USA. He is the high court. He is not the king of the mountain anymore. He is turned into number of internal and foreign connections, dependency, monies, elites, and etc. So, expecting that Trump would just snap the fingers and send Zelensky on a plane, maybe he would want to do that, but he can't. Let's leave kind of Trump out. I have an understanding that it's not just a feeling that in the rhetorics of the foreign policy of Russia in the last 6 months, I qualified it as changes of the enemy. Even a year ago, a main opponent against US. 6 months ago, Europe became the main opponent. I understand it's a diplomatic war, but it sounds daily at the daily agenda. And I have a feeling that you brought us some hope that soon the new elites will come in Britain, in France, in Germany. But I have two questions. First, when? The war takes place every day. The time is ticking. The war does not make pauses. And another election in Germany and France sometime then. It's, what is it, trying to win over war the time, but the main question is not that one. We suppose that, the best from your words, election, pre-election in this year, and they changed the elites in all three countries. And in Germany they have alternative for Germany, and France National Frontier, in Britain the Party of Reforms. How can we be sure that Farage, Bardella, Weidel would not do the same? When the conservatives are changed to the laborists, there was a hope. Like a different course. Why do we think that alternative elites are free from the same money, same globalist? Maybe globalists are playing from both hands, dealing from two hands?
You're, if I can be slightly risque, in most of the Western countries, the opposing parties are merely two cheeks of the same backside. And you can expect no meaningful change just by the changing of the guard. But the reasons for the wholesale rejection of Western governments have to be taken cognizance of, or the next government will suffer the same fate as the previous one. Of course, you can not count on, for example, Italy. Meloni was supposed to be the anti-globalist, the Italia first, just like Trump was supposed to put America first. She was supposed to put Italy first, but she did not. Her policy on the international level is indistinguishable from the others. But France, in Britain we would say you can always count on the French to be the first to surrender. That's what happened in 1940, and leaving us for a time alone, facing the Hitlerites. They folded like a cheap deck chair. And France will be the first to break ranks. Partly because Macron is facing election more immediately, partly because he, of the three musketeers, has the greatest ideological flexibility, let me put it that way. And third, because France's foreign policy has always been more sophisticated than the British and the German. And the French can read writing on the wall, even if it isn't written in French. They are already indicating that they want to call Putin. They want to fix a new European future with Russia. The Quai d'Orsay and the Élysée can be counted on, as they could under Chirac at the time of the Iraq War, to read the picture more clearly than the Anglo-Saxon German.
Там были и Ширак, и Шредер вместе, Франция и Германия.
He did. He did. But Schroeder was acting as a social democrat rather than a German. He did not have consensus in Germany for his opposition. But you're right. He did do so. But Chirac and de Villepin, they were the intellectual owners of the anti-Iraq war position. And this will happen on the Ukraine war also. It might be presided over by Macron, or perhaps by his successor, but it will be the French. I fully expect, I hope the next time I come to Moscow, that it will be full of the French seeking to get to the head of the queue, jostling with the Americans to profit from post-sanctions Russia. But maybe it will not be the next time I come, maybe the time after that. But we are definitely heading for a breach in the European wall. The European wall is not nearly as monolithic as it might appear from the outside. Britain will be the last. Britain has an ancient and peculiar hatred by the British elite of the Russians, predating Putin, predating Bolshevism, predating Tsar Nicholas, going back hundreds of years. And this would need a psychologist in part to analyze, and I doubt if you have the time. But the British will be the last. They will be the last to accept the end of the war. But Britain, I'm sorry to say, is a mere shadow of its former self. We have a comic opera military that could all fit in, all, our entire army, navy and air force, could fit into the stadium of the Moscow Dynamo. It's a fact. We have more admirals than we do have ships. And the ships we have are in dry dock, or should be. our country, our state, our elite, are all mouth and no trousers. You shouldn't think of them as James Bond. You should think of them as Mr. Bean.
Mr. Galloway, thank you very much for this conversation. I do hope it's not the last one. Europe is big. Britain has a long history. We'll have something to talk about. And right now, we want to finish up our time. And if you want to say something to our audience and listeners, please do. Your word.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation very much, and I too hope it isn't the last time we meet. And I hope we meet in better times. When we Brexited from the European Union, and I was one of the leaders of the Brexit campaign, together with Mr. Farage of the Reform Party, which is a very different being today than it was in 2016. Then it was sympathetic to Russia, and now it is against. Then it was against Israel, and now it's for. Reform is in a state of flux. Now, the reason I wanted Brexit was so that Britain could be a genuinely independent power, a force for peace and reconciliation and internationalism, that the good ship Britannia could sail the world, making automatic enemies of nobody and accepting orders from nobody, neither Brussels nor Washington. But this opportunity has been wasted. And although we left the European Union, we are more von der Leyen than von der Leyen. We are more EU than the EU, more Catholic than the Pope. And this has to change, because this does not serve the real national interests of our people, which it is my duty as the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain to safeguard and to fight for. I'm not saying what I'm saying for the sake of Russia. I'm saying what I'm saying for the sake of Britain. And if every politician guarded their own national interest instead of foreign interests like we do, then the world would be a better place, and there would be peace and the possibility of amity. So I've enjoyed it. Terrific. All the best.
Спасибо. Спасибо. Я напоминаю, что это был подкаст.
I remind again that this is a podcast from the International People's Unity Club, the program with Alexander Kazakov. Please subscribe to our social networks, tags, and keep listening.